Hello my dear YouTuber friends, and I hope you're all keeping well. Welcome to this new video, which is a complete overview, review and analysis of the Logitech Flight Yoke System. Now obviously I've made other videos on the Logitech Flight Yoke System. I released one at the beginning of 2021 stating was it worth it in 2021 to buy one. Go and watch that after this video, I'll link it in the top right for you. In this one, I'm taking the point of view of somebody who's interested in buying a yoke system, how it comes in the box, what you get in the box itself, the various features of the Flight Yoke system, the expandability, things like other peripherals that you can buy for it. I'll be talking about that too. A complete in-depth analysis of it, and then I'll come to my conclusion later in the video. So let's get on with this. Now the first thing I want to mention, I apologise for the slight echo in this room. I've just moved into this new place. This is one of the rooms. I'm going to use it as a study, still unpacking different bits and pieces. But it's a bit of an echo. Actually, I don't know if you can see that, it's actually a converted train carriage, this particular room. There are a number of train carriages along where I'm living now, and they're converted into houses and goodness knows what. Quite nifty. And quite quirky. I quite like it. Anyway, within the box itself, as you can see there, you get the Flight Yoke system, the yoke itself, and a throttle quadrant, all for the one price. Now I got mine in late 2019, even before Flight Simulator 2020 released. And I got it for around, I think it's 117, 118, it's roughly around that mark, so it's just below £120. I've just looked on Amazon before I recorded this video, and they're going in stock on Amazon UK for £123.50, which is not a bad price considering today's market. Now, I originally went for this because I wanted a Flight Yoke system and throttle for a good price. Didn't know how much I'd enjoy flying a yoke system, so I just wanted my first Flight Yoke system for around that £120 mark, or just over £100. If you're in a similar situation, even now they're going for around £123, like I've just mentioned. If you've got that money and that's your budget, then this is the yoke system for you because it comes with the throttle and yoke system. There's things like the Honeycomb Alpha, which I'll talk more about in this video. So obviously a more recent yoke, a better yoke system. Just for the yoke system, you're paying here in the UK £255, I believe I just saw on Amazon. £255, you have to buy a throttle quadrant if you want to use throttle with it. You can buy these separate, these Logitech throttle quadrants. So if you bought a honeycomb and throttle quadrant, you'll be paying over £300 for that system. Whereas this, 120, it's under half the cost of that. So that's a major consideration if you're looking to buy your first yoke system. Tell you what, let me get the contents out of the box. I'll do it off camera. I'll get it out of the box just to show you what's inside this main box. Okay, so typically this is your contents of the box. So you take this out of the box and this is what you'll find. Like a sort of giant sort of egg box. It's possibly the best way to describe it, like an ancient ruin. They've had to cut corners somewhere, so the packaging's quite cheap, but it does keep it nicely together. Now, obviously, I've opened mine, and it's not quite the way it normally comes. The wires are loose here, as you can see, simply because I've lost the sort of little ties to keep them together. But here you would find your main throttle. Typically, this will be wrapped in a bag. I just haven't done it for this video, because I'm going to use the yoke again after I've recorded this. But that will all be wrapped up. You've got, in this part here, under this little compartment, would be your throttle and the stand for it and clamp. Now I'll talk more about the clamp and stand later in this video because that's rather ingenious the way these work. But you'd have your throttle system here. As you can see, if I can get this out one-handed. Just thought I'd wrap something to show you how it normally comes. But your throttle system, or throttle quadrant. And somewhere you would have these little knobs which just simply slot on top of the throttle and push down. That's how it comes default. So like that picture there, you'd put them all together and you would have 3 knobs. The other 2 are here somewhere. Yeah, so there you go. A few more. And there's the blue one, and you put them all on top there. Now, I'll come to this more in the video later, but typically for myself now, I have these sorts of replica handle sets, 737 replica handle kit, which I use. And that's a good point with this. You can expand and modify this, even the throttle quadrant, to the way you like it. But I'll come to that later. And obviously here you would have your main yoke system. This would typically be wrapped up, like I've mentioned. Put your flight yoke system. Mine's a little bit worse for wear. I've had it for a couple of years, so a few marks and goodness knows what, but it's not in too bad a condition. These here, you can use an Allen key for these. And actually the Allen key that came with my Holtas 4 system fits these as well. You take the screws out and then you can expand it with things like the multi-panel over here. You can fit it on top of it and screw it down so it stays firmly, or the switch panel or other panels. That's a rather nice feature. This is metal, this part here. The rest of it's plastic, but it feels heavy and hefty for what it is. I'll show you this plugged in later, and I'll talk more about the buttons and features later. One thing you may notice from the start with your yoke, let's get into a better position for this, is that the turning of it is around 45 degrees. It doesn't go to 90 degrees in the left and right turn, or the ailerons. In flight, in any flight simulator that I've tried this with, you're not going to notice, as long as you've got your sensitivities set up and your flight controls set up correctly or to your liking, you're not going to notice that limit. I rarely reach it. So if I'm in a Cessna, for example, I've talked about this in other videos, I'll normally get to about there, which is what, maybe less than 30 degrees, and that'll be a full turn. You rarely get to that 45 degrees. You rarely reach that limit, so it doesn't really come into play. Yokes like the Honeycomb Alpha and goodness knows what will have that 90 degrees, so that will turn all the way down, all the way left and right to 90 degrees. You may notice a little bit of difference coming from something like this to a yoke that has more definition in its turn. If it's going to be your first yoke system like myself, you're just simply not going to notice the limitation of that 45 degree bank or turn. It's just not going to come into play, and you just rarely reach it. It's a question that many people seem to post in my other videos. It just doesn't come into play. And it's here I'll talk about the way the yoke feels in the hand and the way it performs in the simulator. Now, I've not got mine clamped down to the desk, obviously, but I can pitch in and out fairly fluidly with my yoke, certainly turning left and right. There is a bit of a detent in the middle, so if you let go of the yoke when you turn it, it will spring back to the centre. And if you push in or pull out, it will return to the centre. Doesn't seem to matter at all with modern flight simulators, with like Flight Simulator 2020. Doesn't seem to have any effect at all, that detent in the middle, and you're not going to notice it in a simulator like 2020. It's all nice and fluid for me. Other people have bought this yoke and said it's a little bit stiff in the movements. I guess that's just the way it falls for some people. They may get unlucky with their yoke systems. I think the majority of people I speak spoken to, or I've mentioned it in the videos, I've been quite happy with their yoke systems. But just keep in mind, sometimes it may just be a factory default or problem with one or two of these yoke systems where it might be a little bit stiff in the movements. I've certainly not found that on mine. The same with the throttle, of course, all nice and smooth. It's all very loose at the moment because I don't have them clamped down, so there's no stability at the moment. I'll show you that in a moment when they're all nicely clamped and stable. But no problem with the throttles at all. Lots of nice little options you have with that, I'll show you later. And the yoke system itself, not an issue. So there you go, that's pretty much the contents of the box and what you get with your Flight Yoke system. The clamps, they may look a bit intimidating at first. That would slot into those sorts of little slots here of your yoke system. And then you would clamp it to your desk with this. But it's so straightforward. When I first did this, it took me about 5 minutes just to clamp the whole system together. Very straightforward. And I'm going to talk more about the clamp system and the versatility of it later in this video. So that's what you get in the box. That's what you can expect if you buy one. Let's now go and plug this into my PC in the other room and get this all up and running. Okay, so with my Flight Yoke system all connected to my computer and Flight Simulator running, there's a couple more things I want to talk about here. The first thing should be fairly obvious, the expandability of the simple Flight Yoke system, the base model, how you can expand it. As you can see, I've got my multi-panel fitted on top of my Flight Yoke system. I showed you those screws on top of this base system before in this video, and I've just screwed this on top. There's more screws if you've got the switch panel or radio panel from Logitech. You can keep building that up and up. It's here. I'll show you a picture from one of my subscribers, Bravo632. And you can see here in his picture how he's expanded and built up from the base Flight Yoke system into something rather spectacular. If you've got the means and you buy a couple of extra peripherals for your Flight Yoke system, you can go wild with your imagination and setups. So there's a huge expandability with the base system, as I'm showing you here. And even with the throttle quadrant, I've got my 737 replica handles here, fitted now. And I love these. These feel fantastic. Still fully recommend that. I've got the throttle there, that feels fantastic. The flaps, I love using them. And speed braking aircraft that support them. These just work wonderfully. And I'll show you a couple of other pictures of other handles or lever sets you can buy. They're all over the place. Places like eBay sells them and other places. If you've got a 3D printer, you can print up a couple of handles yourself. So you can let your imagination really go wild. And another thing I want to touch about is the clamping system. That simple clamping system. See if I can get a picture of that. I've got my Flight Yoke system clamped there to the desk. And here as well, with those plastic clamps I showed you before. Now, I've recently moved. It's in like a new place. This is one of the rooms. I'm in like a sort of lagoon, well in the sticks of where I am. A lovely place though. And it was unfurnished, so I had to bring a desk with me from my previous place. Now, this desk used to have my Commodore 64, and it's just a simple desk that I put in the corner in my old place. But even this simple desk, I've removed the drawer, which is now down there for the moment. Removed the drawer, and I'm able to even clamp my Flight Yoke system and throttle to this simple desk. I'll show you a couple of other setups that I used to have and other desks. Pretty much any desks that you have, this should clamp to. And of course, lastly but not leastly, it's all the buttons. A major feature of this cheap yoke. It's, I say cheap, compared to other yokes, it is quite cheap. You've got hat switch here, a rocker switch here that you can use for various things. Rocker switches here that I use for my elevator and aileron trims. Button here you can use for speaking if you play a multiplayer that I used to use, or autopilot or whatever you want. Function switches here, stopwatch. Yep, start that again. Stopwatch there, as you can see. I'll link a video I did about that. And you can even set these up as functions in the aircraft. I've got this one here as my landing gear, for example. Obviously, you got the three levers there, throttle, mixture, propeller, or like I have it here, throttle, flaps, and speed brake. So you can configure them in various simulators. You've got 6 buttons here as well that you can assign for various different things. There's lots of configuration options, or lots of possibility for different configurations. You've even got a mode switch, which is a bit fairly redundant in Flight Simulator 2020, because you can simply set up configurations within the actual simulator itself. But in Flight Simulator X, this would work well. And I believe X-Plane as well, you could switch between each mode, and then for different aircraft you could have different functions for your different switches. So it's just brilliant. For that sort of base price, I got mine for 100 and something like 118, 119 pound when I bought mine. You've got all these different configuration possibilities with the buttons. I just think it's fantastic. Let me now take you to my conclusion. So taking everything into consideration, the expandability possibilities, the actual base number of buttons and options you get with it, for that small price, or it's maybe not so small for some people, but for a yoke system, it's quite a low price. You can still get these for around the 120 mark, and you get the throttle and, sorry, you get the throttle quadrant and the yoke system all in the same box. It's hard to beat that value. There are better yokes out there, yes, for sure. The Honeycomb Alpha yoke looks to be a better yoke. I may upgrade to that at some point in the future. I've just been in no rush to do it. This just does the job nicely. You set up your sensitivities in Flight Simulator 2020, for example. Set up all your configurations. It just works wonderfully. And like I said, if you buy more panels for this and levers and goodness knows what, this is as good for me as any yoke out there. Even though it's the only yoke system I have, I'm just in no urge or great rush to buy another one. The only reason I'll do that is to make videos and to do more testing on different yoke systems and configurations. But I'm in no great rush to do it. If I was just playing Flight Simulator, not making videos, this would do. I just wouldn't buy anything else. And that's my biggest recommendation. It does the job, and it does the job well. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I'll be interested to know. Give the video a like if it's been helpful to you. There's going to be many more Flight Simulator and configurations of yokes and other controllers in the future, so subscribe for that. And I'll see you soon.